Welcome, everyone, to Lifting Spirits, Pleasure with Aphrodisiacs. This is a class brought to you in partnership with the Herbal Academy. So special. Um, as you probably know, I am Rachelle Robinette, herbalist and the author of Naturally, the Herbalist's Guide to Health and Transformation. All of the material in today's class is from the book. As you can imagine, there's much, much more in Naturally, but I'll give you a little taste of the flavor of the whole thing. And before we dive in tonight, I just wanted to share that this is in partnership, as I mentioned, with the Herbal Academy. And in particular, it's a celebration of their herbarium. And that is the Herbal Academy's incredible herbal membership space. The herbarium is an all-in-one learning experience for plant lovers, herbalists, the herbal curious at any stage of your journey. It has an ever-expanding database of monographs, and monographs are essentially like mini essays or profiles, if you will, on herbs. So if you're interested in one specific herb, a monograph will give you a really good picture of that herb sort of in its entirety. The herbarium also includes short courses like this one, monthly master classes, and hundreds of herbal resources. So like I said, it's very rich. It offers tools, knowledge, and inspiration to deepen your practice and stay inspired. Um, it's a very living ecosystem, I would say, and incredibly beneficial if you're interested in this sort of thing, which I assume you all are because you're here. So part one, let's talk about aphrodisiacs. So aphrodisiacs are generally herbs for pleasure and connection. They're often thought of as libido boosters, right? They're going to turn on our libido. But actually, aphrodisiacs can work in a lot of different ways. And I've taught a lot of classes on aphrodisiacs. It's a topic that is probably never going out of style. And something that I always taught, and obviously we'll share here, is that anything that we find pleasurable, anything that we find that turns us on or puts us in the mood or changes our state in such a way that we consider it, ideal for whatever sort of pleasure we're about to indulge in, those are all aphrodisiacs. So one aphrodisiac for one person may not be the same for another. Now, of course, there are herbs, which I'll talk about, which do certain things that help our body perform sexually, for example. But if you don't like chocolate, then cacao is not going to be an aphrodisiac for you in the sort of sensual sight, taste, smell, like touch, or texture way that it would to somebody who loves chocolate. The same goes for anything else. Oysters, roses, vanilla, lavender, cucumber, these are common examples. And if there's something in your life that you find does turn you on in whatever sense of, being turned on, then that for you is an aphrodisiac. So just know that it could be poetry, it could be a song, and it could be an herb. So aphrodisiacs are kind of broad in terms of their definition. Now, from an herbal standpoint, as I mentioned, there are herbs that do function specifically as aphrodisiacs. And the way that they do that tends to be by helping our bodies to relax, helping to increase circulation, helping to awaken our senses, and helping us to access joy. So in Naturally, I describe aphrodisiac herbs that increase blood flow, especially to the pelvis or the heart. Those that help modulate dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, important neurotransmitters for our mood and state in general. Those that help reduce anxiety and inhibition. Because, for example, some people, an aphrodisiac might be something that calms them down. For someone else, an aphrodisiac might be something that awakens them or energizes them, right? And then others that support hormone balance, because of course, hormone balance is very important if we're talking about sexual pleasure, libido, or these sorts of things. So, some examples of my favorite aphrodisiac herbs. Damiana. Please put a note in if you have worked with Damiana before. So, Damiana is sort of a flirt of an herb. It is gently stimulating, mildly euphoric. It's a gentle herb, so gently stimulating, mildly euphoric. It's known for its aphrodisiac and mood enhancing effects. This is a really good herb if you find that nervous energy is inhibiting you from experiencing pleasure. So it's one that's going to like calm things down, like awaken but calm. Does that make sense? That's how herbs work. They're like this and this. And it's been used traditionally in Mexico and Central America for centuries. Um, you see Damiana as a tea commonly, as a tincture, and it's also pretty common in herbal smoke blends. So if you're interested in smoking herbs, Damiana is one that we find in those blends. Next up, we have maca. So maca is native to the Andes. It's technically a food. So it's an herb, but it's a food. We classify herbs as foods when they are like, I guess one way to say it is the therapeutic range is very, very wide. So you can consume a lot of it, or you maybe need to consume a lot of it in order to get the therapeutic benefits. So maca is traditionally kind of eaten, but of course we see it dried and ground, and you have it in powders or tinctures or capsules where it's very concentrated and then it's being used more as a medicine. Maca supports libido, stamina, fertility, and hormone regulation. It also works through the HPA axis, so hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis in the brain, which is part of the definition of adaptogens. I am not saying that maca is an adaptogen, but that is how adaptogens work. Maca also works through the endocrine system, which is the sort of master regulating system for our hormones. And like I mentioned, because it's a food, if you're using it in powder form, it often needs to be dosed quite high. So just look at the supplement that you're using and make sure to follow the recommendations because it'll depend on how concentrated that maca is. The flavor is great, so you can use it in smoothies, like treats, like raw treats, these sorts of things. And then another note about maca is that there is gelatinized maca and maca that has not been gelatinized. And the gelatinization process it's basically a process that makes it easier to absorb the maca. So if you ever have like indigestion or stomach cramps, or you're finding that you have a hard time digesting maca, then you can use gelatinized maca. And they're different colors like red, black, white, I believe is like whitish yellow. All right. So next up we have cacao. Cacao, probably the best known aphrodisiac. Um, Cacao, as I'm sure all of you know, is a tree. And the tree produces fruit, and the fruit contains seeds, little beans, actually. I mean, they're not beans, but it's a cacao bean. And those are what we make medicine from, and those are what we make chocolate from. So, something that I like to mention is that the more pure your cacao and making sure that it's actually cacao and not cocoa will ensure that you're actually consuming this herb, this aphrodisiac, this functional, natural ingredient, as opposed to cacao, which is essentially just a flavor. I'm sorry, cocoa is essentially just a flavor. It's been processed so highly that you lose the medicine from it. And if you like chocolate, it can be worth checking to see if there's cacao in your chocolate. Or is it just cocoa and milk and sugar, you know? So the more cacao, the more medicine, the more aphrodisiac, the more pleasure. So cacao contains compounds that help prevent the breakdown of anandamide. And anandamide is known as our bliss molecule. So that's a fun like fact. It helps to kind of enhance this natural bliss molecule that we have. And it also contains theobromine. So theobromine is this gentle stimulant, and that's why a lot of people find it hard to sleep after they've had cacao, for example. It's also why it's toxic to dogs. And not to laugh at that. Um, Cacao is also relaxing. It's beneficial for the heart. It helps elevate our mood. It can enhance our sensory perception. And I think, cacao really is an example of, as I mentioned at the beginning, one of these ingredients that we either find ourselves attracted to or not, depending on previous, experience with it, connotations we might have, associations we might have, that sort of thing. Thank you for being here. Thank you for exploring with me. Be well, everyone. Bye.